Hi, we're going to make another form out of a template again. This time we're going to make a bowl form. So this is obviously a portion of a circle. The center of the circle is here. I've cut out the edges so that when I bring these edges around, they will make a wider shaped bowl than the taller tumbler form that we've just made. So I'm going to use my slabs that I've already made. I used my rib tool to compress the surface well. I'm going to use my texture tool, my favorite texture tool. I don't have to hit it square on. I like hitting it with the corners too because that accents the shadows just a little bit deeper. And these little marks in the clay will hold on to some of the glaze after we start glazing the little pool and add some nice variety to that surface. So I'm going to use my template again, figure out which direction I want that to go. I'm going to take my knife and cut all the way around, being careful to follow the seam as best I can. The edge of the template is what I mean. I'm going to cut down the angles on the sides. And if you follow those angles in, you can see, I could see that they go right into the center of this middle circle. We're going to save this circle actually for, I'm going to try and finish it off by eye because I'm going to need a bottom for my bowl. So look, if I peel that circle out, I'm going to set that aside. That's going to be the bottom of my bowl. Set my pattern aside and move my extra clay out of the way again. So I have now this nice circular template. I'm going to do the same thing, similar thing that I did to my tumbler forms by using a paper to taper the edges where I've cut with a knife. I'd like that to have a little bit more of a smooth, tapered edge. I like that forms that have every very thoughtful addressing of edges, handles, that sort of thing. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to press down on one side of my cut edge to be the bevel when I join. Right? I'm going to flip this slab over now carefully because my table is getting wetter. And I'm going to smooth and taper that cut outer edge with my paper again. I don't have a piece of paper. I didn't pick a piece of paper that was big enough, so I'm just walking it around as I go. And then that cut edge on the joining side, I'm going to taper the other edge too. You'll see in a minute why I'm not tapering that center bit. It's going to, when it turns the circle, it's going to sit down a little bit differently. So I'm going to flip this back. I want this pattern to be on the inside of my bowl. So I'm going to set this slab down with the pattern facing up and the cut edge facing away from me. I'll take my serrated rib, the toothy rib. I'm going to score the top side of the left piece. And I'm going to score the underside of the right edge. And I'm going to add a little bit of water, dabbing it with my fingertip to that cut edge. Then this can be a little bit tricky, but you'll want to grab both sides of that, and as you are ready to join those seams together, you're going to lift and push forward. And if you can see over my hands, that bowl, I'm going to give that a quick press together. Look, at the bowl is already standing up. So you don't want to fold that seam over and have a flattened slab. You want to lift and pick it up, move your hands forward gently, and join that seam together. I'm going to use the flat parts of my finger to compress that seam together and coax and coax and coax. I've already addressed that seam with the paper, and so I'd like to keep a little bit of that kind of handling and surface there. And now when you try this, you'll see that for the most part, that cut edge, there's a nice edge on the inside of where that cut circle was, which is why I didn't bevel it. I want to use the weight of that. Now, I'm going to actually use my towel to put down on the table here for a minute, because I don't want the hard edge table to flatten the edge of my seam. I'm going to flip that bowl over so I can compress a little bit better from that inside edge. And now I'm going to use my serrated rib to really score this bottom. Rough that up. It's not quite flat, but I'm scoring this enough that it's taking some of the clay back and leaving a nice edge for me to work with when I add the bottom to it. There's a little trick that I discovered too. I cut this bottom slab out from the center, and you can choose to put the pattern side in the inside of the bowl, or I rather like finding pattern on the bottom of a piece. So I'm going to turn it so the inside of the bottom is plain against the outside of the bowl, the pattern on the inside of the bowl. So here's a little trick. I'm going to moisten this scored edge of the bottom of the bowl, and I'm just going to gently place that slab there for a second. And if you look carefully, there's a little bit of watermark on the edge of that where the bowl and the slab met. So I'm going to take that mark, I'm going to cut just a little bit bigger than that mark so the circle fits right over the bottom of that bowl. See, I had to cut a little bit off because we folded that circle up. We made the circle that came out of the center slightly smaller, so I could cut a little bit of that off. Now I'm going to score the outer edge of my circle bottom. I'm going to moisten it just a little bit too. And then I'm going to attach it to the bottom. Now you could use the paper on the edge of this circle to soften those edges a little bit, but I'm going to use my thumb and my finger to press around so that they aren't too sharp. I'm going to take away that little edge by pressing down a little bit. Can you see how that happens when I press with my thumb going around? And then I'm going to very carefully turn that bowl back over, tap it gently, and then you can work on the inside compression just a little bit. I'm not pushing so hard that I'm making dents in the clay. I'm just very gently using the soft part of my thumb to press against that seam. So when you look inside, now we have texture around the outside and a smooth bottom. And when I look on the bottom, I have a little bit of texture down there just to add some visual interest. I will admit that I happened on that accidentally. That's how most good design things happen. You think you know what the first choice should be, and then you happen on it some other way by accident, and paying attention and embracing it. I could have let it go and not paid attention to it, but I actually thought that might make for more interesting forms. So that's what I do. Now, I didn't talk about this with the tumblers yet, but I could actually gently put my hand on the outside of this bowl and press very gently from the inside to give this curve a little more fullness, right? These slabs are fairly soft. You can work with them slightly stiffer or even a little bit wetter, and that will allow for you to stretch and manipulate the edges a little bit. So by stretching this bowl into a little bit of a curve, I've really given it that much more volume, and I think it's a pretty big difference. You can play with edges. Edges don't have to be straight and level unless you want them to be. They can have shapes. You can do cutouts. You can leave them thicker and do carving on them. Your slabs can be thicker. Your slabs can be thinner. There are lots of variables, and they all add up to your making good design choices. That's our goal So have some fun with these forms, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.